I want to spend a few minutes talking about the 40-second clock and 25-second clock. It's a pretty straightforward rule, but there's also some philosophy and understanding behind it. So we want to talk a little bit about this clarification that Federation put in, just to make sure everybody understands in some situations when the 40-second clock starts. Generally, after an official's timeout, we go to 25 seconds. But there are a few situations where after an official's timeout, the play clock goes to 40. And that's when there's a first down for Team A, except after a legal kick. When there's equipment issue, if it's initially related to a defensive player, and an injury situation, if initially related to a defensive player. By philosophy, though, this really only applies when the game clock is running or when the game clock would next start on the ready for play. And we'll talk about this on the next slide. So let's just kind of go over in general, when do we have a 25-second clock and when do we have a 40-second clock? 25-second clock, I usually say it starts and ends for the major segments of the game, and 40 seconds is when normal football is playing. What do I mean by that? Well, I kind of divide the game into three segments. The first segment is a kickoff. The second segment is the scrimmage football that goes in the middle. And the third segment involves scoring, the try, after the field goal, and things like that. When we want to start one of those major segments, we're going to use the 25-second clocks. But when we're in that scrimmage segment and normal football is playing, meaning that Team A gets the ball on one side of the field and starts moving down the other, that's normal scrimmage football. By default, once that starts, we're using the 40-second clock. Well, let's talk about the 25 seconds first. When we start the game, the period, a half, or kickoff. When we have a try after a score. Or when we have a new series after a legal kick, the 25-second clock is going to be in play. It's highlighted in green because that's a clarification that Federation put in. That was something we were already doing by interpretation last year. We're also going to go to a 25-second when there's some administrative stop to the game. When there's a charge timeout, a penalty administration, some other administrative stop, and most official timeouts. In those situations, we're going to 25 seconds. 40 seconds, like we said, is in play from one scrimmage down to the next, including when Team A makes the first down. The game clock might stop in those situations, but if he's down in bounds, the 40-second clock is going to go. If he's down out of bounds, the 40-second clock is going to go. It doesn't matter what the game clock does. It operates differently. After a legal kick, but no new series. For example, Team K decides to try a quick kick or a punt or a field goal attempt on third down, and it's blocked and stays behind the line, and A falls on it. Well, there's no new legal series. The game clock keeps moving in that situation, and the 40-second clock goes in that situation as well. But there is a change this year, and this is the clarification. In some situations where there's an official's timeout that would normally go to 25 seconds, but because it could cause a possible disadvantage to the offense, we're going to go to 40 seconds. And that's a defensive injury or a defensive equipment issue. Maybe a helmet coming off. Think of this situation. Here's the reason this is in. In the last minute or two of the game, Team A is ahead, and they're just trying to run the clock out. There's about 50 seconds left in the game, and they're down in bounds, so the clock keeps going, and they want to run the entire play clock down the entire 40 seconds to get from 50 to 10 seconds. However, on the last play, a defensive player's helmet came off, or now maybe a defensive player's injured. Well, last year, we would have taken the official's timeout, taken care of that player, and then set the play clock to 25 seconds. Well, what that did, however, is take away a lot of time that Team A could have used to its advantage in running the clock down. This clarification takes care of that. When that situation happens, we're going to put the clock at 40 seconds and start the clock at that point. It's to prevent the disadvantage that could happen to the offense. One caveat to that, though. If the game clock is going to start on the snap and these things happen, place 25 seconds on the play clock. And here's an example to think about it. Team A throws an incomplete pass. The 40-second clock is going, but the game clock isn't. Now we have a defensive injury. Well, taking the letter of the law of the rule, we would go to 40 seconds on the play clock. However, the game clock's not moving. And so the disadvantage to the offense didn't happen in that situation. So if we put 40 seconds on the clock, we'd just be standing there for an extra 15 seconds for no reason. So in that situation, just put 25 seconds on the play clock, because the game clock's not going to start till the snap in that situation either. Remember also that this exception is only for a defensive injury or a defensive equipment issue. If the defense commits a penalty, that doesn't count here. The defense commits a penalty, after we enforce the penalty, we're going to a 25-second clock. It's only an injury and an equipment issue that we're going to go to 40.